Well, everyone, welcome to the evening portion of the events. I think to recap this afternoon, we've had a really good array of speakers working on projects related to India and boosting philanthropy from the United States in a way that will be impactful from India. And I think we also heard great comments from the audience about things of interest to them, things that they're passionate about, where they'd like to see some exchange. Our panel here is interesting because they represent much more professional efforts, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way to the other organizations. They're all professional, but Wadhwani Foundation and Ekal Vidyalaya have been able to build up pretty decent-sized staffs in the United States, chapters in a lot of cities, programs in India that are very diverse, and they've really become among the larger, more engaged organizations in terms of outreach, fundraising, all of that stuff. So I think the value of this panel is really around the two organizations and how they've built up their presence in the United States, how they've built up their presence in India. So we'll start with giving each of them a chance to talk about their work, but what I really want to discuss after that is a little bit more about how they run NGOs that have an India focus, but also have significant staff, volunteers, operations in the United States, because I think that's what many of the people in the room strive to with their organizations is a larger size and larger impact. So with that, Ajay, why don't I turn it to you first to talk a little bit about Wadhwani Foundation?
Okay. Hello. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I want to thank Asif and for inviting me. Really appreciate that. So the foundation's primary mission is economic acceleration in emerging economies. We started 10 years ago with that mission, and today we have expanded into Pakistan, Indonesia, and Malaysia as well. And our goal is to sort of go to the emerging economies in Africa and South America as well. Going back to India, we drove economic acceleration in India through leveraging India's human potential. So as you all know, India has been adding 1 million people a month to the workforce. That happened, last 10 years, is going to happen for the next couple of decades as well. So given that human potential, the first thing we looked at is all of these people would need jobs. So job creation became a primary theme for the foundation. Also, while India is sort of getting young, with all this youth coming into the workforce, most of the major economies of the world were also getting old. US is getting old, most of Europe is getting old, China also is getting old. So we felt that there was an opportunity here if we could upskill our population at scale. And with globalization, there was an opportunity to then use the skill population for around the globe. So those are the two primary thrust areas. We today have about 5 initiatives to target job creation, to target skill development. And the fact that we are trying to do it at a national level, we know it won't happen without changes in policies. So we have a policy initiative as well. On the side, we have another initiative in the US. Actually, there are 2 initiatives in the US. One is we have a chair, and Rick is here, who's heading the chair at CSIS, that drives Indo-US partnerships, primarily focused on economic acceleration, although we have a broader agenda with that. And then the other initiative in the US is what we call Race to a Job. This is targeting American youth that do not go to college. 3 years ago, when we looked at the data, unemployment in US was 8%, youth unemployment was 16%, and the youth between 16 and 25 was 24%. So today, US high schools sort of had a mad obsession to send everybody to a 4-year college. And not many go to a 4-year college. A large percentage, in fact, don't go to a 4-year college. And As you know, 46% go to community colleges. So we wanted to have a thrust and focus around trade-based vocational education on the US side. So to kind of reach that kind of scale, both in India and US, we need to leverage networks, and most of us have a Silicon Valley background, so we leverage technology to reach scale. So let me give you just a flavor of the kinds of things we do. Am I doing well on time? Or?
You did great.
Okay. So our oldest initiative was around job creation to create entrepreneurs. Again, if you look at India, a million people a month getting added to the workforce, all of them will need jobs. But if we looked at the mindset of our best and brightest in India, most of our graduates on graduation were chasing best MNC jobs, multinational companies job. Very few were engaged in entrepreneurship. And we were relying on the Tatas and the Birlas to really create jobs. So we targeted college students. The idea was to educate and inspire college students to look at entrepreneurship as an alternative. If I fast forward to where we are today, we work with 500 institutes. We have trained 3,000 faculty around the country to teach entrepreneurship courses. We equip them with all the things they need to teach entrepreneurship. So on an average today, 500,000 students every year are inspired and educated towards entrepreneurship courses. A subset of them show a deeper interest, so we handhold them through the next stage, including doing things like starting campus companies. And the way we measure our success in this program is look on graduation, how many of our students start companies, what sort of jobs they are creating, what's the average revenue, so that we get a sense of the quality of the jobs. So today we are on a run rate where our students are creating 1,500 companies a year. And we so this will give you a flavor of what we do. And similarly, we are doing something similar on the skill development side. So that's it. Thank you.
I think, Ajay, you're being modest about the projects of the Wadhwani Foundation. I think Ramesh Wadhwani has been one of the few NRIs to really commit his resources and connections, Desh being one of the others, who you'll hear later, to philanthropy in India. And so I think the success of the National Entrepreneurship Network to have 500 universities with entrepreneurship clubs and courses is quite impressive. And it speaks to what we spoke about in the earlier panel I was on, which is in the education space, there is a real opportunity to influence change from the United States working in India. And I think this is just another example of that. So now we'll turn to our next speaker, Vinod Jhunjhunwala, who's the president of Ekal Vidyalaya USA. You saw a brief movie about their work, and many of you have been to their events in different cities in the United States. So with that, I'll just give you 7-8 minutes to talk about the work.
Sure, thank you.
Definitely.
So I'm Vinod Jhunjhunwala, president of Ekal. I took this office on the 1st of January of this year. I have been involved with this for the last 25, even before, for education. The family runs schools. Many people earlier had mentioned of girls' education. So the family runs a girls' school only in Malsisar in Rajasthan. That is where my father was born. We also run a big college in Jhunjhunu, and that many of those graduates are in this country. I myself hold a bachelor's and master's degree from MIT, and it is that education that really has propelled, and I have seen the value of education. And as we move forward, I will also explain as to where Ekal has held power of education forums. The speakers earlier had also stressed on education. They had stressed on philanthropy, and that is what we are here for. So Ekal is not only covering the basic education, but functional literacy. And through that functional literacy, give them the confidence. We provide them with health education that many people had earlier mentioned. And what is most important is Gramothan. how do we develop a village? Because if the village is developed, people are going to stay there, they're going to have good health, the country is going to grow, and with the initiatives of our new Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, we are going to see many more things happen in the next decade. Thank you.
So let me start and ask you the first question here. I remember getting my first invitation to an Ekal Vidyalaya event about 15 years ago. And now, at that point, it was still volunteer-driven for the most part. And it has transitioned into a more professional organization with people who are working full-time, chairs, boards, all of that. Tell me a little bit about the transition. What were the steps that went into making it more of professional, increasing fundraising, having more chapters? Tell me a little bit about the key transitions for the organization from going from sort of informal volunteer to a big, global entity.
Sure. India, we have 6,000 full-time workers. In the US, we have one executive director, and quite a few people know her. She's from Boston. She has a degree from IIT, and she worked at MIT. The others, we have a skeleton staff of 5 people in Houston. Their work basically is to collect the donations, account for it, and take care of it. For a need to grow, we could not have done with volunteers only, as you have heard from other speakers earlier. Volunteers will do it at their convenience. Unless they are retired, then they're available to you 24/7. But most of them are not. And they enjoy this because what they are doing, the education and the value addition, as was mentioned earlier. So we finally decided, hey, we have to grow, and therefore we hired. Our objective further is to hire 4 more zonal directors on a part-time or a full-time basis, so that they can approach the philanthropists, they can approach the foundations, so that we can generate more contributions and move this movement further. Right now, we have only 54,000 schools. Harvard Business School has initiated a study how to escalate from this current 54 to 100,000. So if Nitin Roria, who's the dean, if he hadn't believed in education, he would not have given this grant. So that is what our plan is. We are going to use that. And that study is going to be a matter of discussion and study at the spring class of Harvard Business School in 2015.
And I'll just add, when I was with the Deshpande Foundation and we launched Akshay Patra USA, hiring a staff was enormous. We had a 20x return on our grant just in the first year alone in terms of what they were able to raise in the United States. So it's really a no-brainer for any NGO thinking about really wanting to have more and more impact in India to find the resources to do that. Ajay, I want to ask you a similar question about programs in India. Now, you obviously don't have to do as much fundraising in the United States, but you manage a lot of partnerships in India. How do you manage quality? How do you assess the partners that you have? 500 institutions, a lot of other programs. So how do you keep tabs on quality control? And I ask that from 2 perspectives. One, as an organization just having good practices, but also one of the biggest concerns NRIs have is where their money is going, fairly or unfairly. They always have questions about where the money is being spent. And so how do you deal with those sort of broader issues of legitimacy, reputation, evaluation?
Mm-hmm. So we ourselves run our own organization. Is this working? Yeah. It's fairly outcomes driven. So we have an outcomes metrics for each of our initiatives, and basically when we are signing up with partners, we are projecting those outcomes onto the partners as well. Let me explain a little bit about our model. So typically we come up with our own niche high impact initiatives and make the initial investment. So 100% of the investment is ours to demonstrate that this is doable. The fact that we are trying to achieve national scale, the only way to achieve that kind of scale is to leverage government resources or market forces. So those are the two primary areas. And our mantra is show feasibility and viability, and to prove to ourselves that this is going to work, but then get a 10x investment from the government. So recently on our skilling initiative, we started that 3 years ago, which is a combination of vocational education to create a parallel community college system in India, as well as take that vocational education into high schools. And we've been able to leverage about 1,000 crores of government money to fund vocational education. First is around 400 new community colleges, but more importantly, around somewhere close to about 600 high schools that are putting these programs in place. That's one partnership, is at the government level. The second partnership is around we can't reach scale without building networks. So this is the Institute for Entrepreneurship that I talked about. So there we had a very simple metrics. We know that it takes 5 years from when we sign an institute to when they start producing entrepreneurs at the other end. So the first 5 years, we are essentially managing input parameters, how many courses they are conducting, how many students are taking it, what's the qualitative assessment from the students. But very quickly, we move on to outcomes. How many companies are getting created, how many jobs are getting created by these companies, and what revenue they're generating. So the focus on outcomes, I think, is what makes it easier.
So that leads into my next question, which I'll just stay with you for that, is what is the time frame for achieving impact? So these things take a long time. So you mentioned 5 years plus, but if somebody was to do a case study on you and say, this is a good example of how long it takes to impact change in India, what's the answer you'd give?
So impact and scale in most of these is a 10, 15-year journey. But impact at the individuals, but the impact at the individual institute level can be a very short term. So for instance, I talked about on the entrepreneurship, it's a 5-year impact. On the schools, actually the impact is a 1 year. When they graduate, we measure, are these students that are taking our vocational courses getting jobs? If they are getting jobs, are they getting jobs with a higher salary compared to a student graduating from another school that we aren't involved in, and so on. So, but these experiments to scale is a 10, 15-year journey in India.
So I think that's a good answer. So for everybody looking to have impact, 10 to 15 years, you have to commit for the long haul. I think that's very important. Vinod, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question about Ekal Vidyalaya. So one of the challenges we have as NRIs sitting here is that we want to work on everything, the waters, education, health, everything. Everybody wants to do everything. As an organization with a lot of volunteers who are passionate, who give time, money, how do you prioritize where Ekal Vidyalaya's money gets spent, and then how do you evaluate that it's working and shift if it's not?
Sure. Functional literacy, that is the entry grade. It's not only the children, but the villagers also get educated because of the weekly school that we hold for them. They use various organic farming techniques. They have available to them the Right to Information Act, so we help them fill that information so that they can get it from the government. We have linked up with Aspiring Minds, a company in India, and they have evaluated the teachers and the students. And they found that schools which were over 2 years old were doing better, and the quality of the school and the education was dependent on the quality of the teachers. So we have a teachers training program which is a part of the overall curriculum. If the teacher is not trained, the school is not opened. The beauty also is that the village selects, we identify the teachers, the village approves of it, and then he is respected in that village, and that has a multifarious effect not only on the village but also on the children. As far as transparency is concerned, all our accounts are audited in India and also in the US. They are published on our website. We have the BBB rating as well, so that people can address and feel comfortable that their donation is being well used. We also invite you all, whenever you go to India, there's a form on Ekal Vidyalaya.org on the website. Fill it in. You will be taken care of. You see the village for yourself. You see the children. Earlier, one of the speakers mentioned of the shine in the eyes of the children or the students. And when you see that, that is what touches your heart. And that is when you open your wallets and say, yes, education got us here. Let us give them that opportunity, get them that education. So if not, if they cannot come to the US, at least they'll do better, not only for themselves, but for their family, the village, and from what Modi ji has said, that is going to contribute to the development of India.
Great. So I'm going to ask one last question and then open it up to the audience for a few questions. I'd like to ask, how do you differentiate the role of United States operations and India operations and give flexibility to the India team to do what they do and do here? So as a lot of the NGOs people are involved with here grow, that becomes a natural tension point, is who's doing what and whose ownership and responsibility. So maybe you could each talk about how you separate what you do in Silicon Valley or in US with India.
So we have different initiatives. So the US team here, so first of all, we look to US for the money, and the money comes from a single guy. So that's the only connection we have. The initiatives that we have in the US, we have a US team. We are leveraging the India team because it's a technology solution for US as well. We are leveraging the India team to develop the US solution. So essentially, adopting the Silicon Valley software model of outsourcing to India. But beyond that, there is really no connection.
So the India management for all these projects is fully empowered to run all the initiatives there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where the expertise lies.
Right.
Our expertise is to involve people like you. Nish mentioned, quite a few here have mentioned of Ekal has been doing, and they have liked and they have seen what we are doing. We hold musical functions. This year we had them in 62 cities, and that is the backbone of our art collection. There are several individual donors who provide funds for a particular cause. There is one who says, hey, I want to develop a village. I'll adopt so many villages, and here's the money. Somebody says, no, I prefer vermicompost because if they have good organic manure, the food is going to be good. We are able to collect about $4.5–5 million. This is what we're going to see this year. Last year it was 4.3, and our target is 10 million. We hope to achieve that 10 million in the next 2 years. Majority of our donors, 60%, are very small donors. Therefore, as somebody mentioned, yes, we value them because it is them who make the awareness of Ekal Vidyalaya. By word of mouth, the more population we have, more people know about Ekal, the word is going to spread around. Then there are donors who donate $5,000, $10,000, as much as $100,000. We are also working on an endowment fund because within 25 years, as the video indicated, we have grown enough that we need to lay the foundation for a long-term plan and growth. This year, I invite you all in 2015. We are having Parinam Kumbh. Parinam means what is the result. the 25 years of hard work, please come to Dhanbad. Why Dhanbad? Because that is the Gangotri of Ekal. That is where it all started in 1988. See for yourself, there are going to be 15,000 people from all over India. The students, the teachers, the villagers, they are going to share with you what has their experience been, how Ekal has benefited them to the growth of not only the village, but individual and the country as a whole.
So we're going to open it up for questions. I think because we have limited time, what I'd like to do is I'll write down all the questions and then we can answer them in bunches to maximize. So are there mics floating around? Or is everyone in a food coma already?
I have a question for Ajay. How do you manage capital for the entrepreneurs, the ones that start out of schools and colleges?
So I think in the last 3 years, we have shifted our focus from creating entrepreneurs to supporting entrepreneurs. And one of the key things that an entrepreneur requires is capital. So again, if we talk about the numbers, we ourselves are generating 1,500 companies a year. Over the last 10 years, the ecosystem in India has dramatically changed, where today an IITian, their first preference is to start a company rather than come to the US. So our focus has shifted in building an ecosystem. A lot of these young startups, what they need is the first $50,000 to get their companies going. And you can only borrow so much from friend and family. So a year ago, we initiated a program where we have tons of HNIs in the country, high net worth individuals. For them, $50,000 is play money. So we put together a three-day course with a professor from Oxford to train HNIs to become angel investors. So that's step one. And then we connect them to our entrepreneurs and the community entrepreneurs, those that came outside of our system. So that's the ecosystem sort of we have building. Then there are some government programs that are ineffective. You know, the SIDBI today has programs, and we are working on the policies so that we can free up those dollars as well, or rupees.
Other questions? I'm going to ask, while we're waiting, Vinod, one question. Oh, there's one here? Yeah, go ahead. He's with the media, by the way, so be careful.
Oh, sorry. This is not
All
for,
the more it's important.
yeah. Maybe I'll chase this up with you later, but for Ekal, my question is for Ekal. You're involved in Vanvasi areas, and so are you also operating in areas affected by Maoist insurgency? And if you are, what is your experience? And two, you just said, and I should have done my homework. I didn't know you started in Dhanbad, which is home of coal mafia of India, and so you deal with very dangerous people in that sense. And so, what's been your experience?
Very good question. When it comes to your own children, they forget about all those differences. Insurgency doesn't exist as far as Ekal is concerned. But when any visitors go, we make sure that we do have, that they are told about it, they are going to be coming. Even Ekal volunteers or Ekal workers, when they go to those areas, whether it be in Chhattisgarh or in the coal mafia, as you mentioned, yes, they are informed and they welcome us with open arms because they see the benefit of education and the development of village in their own area. So that is how we take care of that.
Other questions?
So, aside from financial resources, which is dire needs in India for any programs, what are the biggest challenges you see as your programs are prospering?
So aside from the financial resources that you guys need to convey your programs and mature your programs in India, what are the biggest challenges you see growing your program in India?
Finance is not the biggest challenge. There are many people, we all have benefited from education, therefore we see what the value of education is. It is the organization, having the people, having them trained, to even educate the villagers how important it is for them to send their children to school. Ekal school is a difficult task. The girls normally, they do not want to send them. Cultural differences, traditions. Oh, the girl, she will get the last opportunity, if at all, to get the education. Therefore, those are the cultural and traditional differences, difficulties we have, and therefore we have so many people on the ground so that they can be educated, they can be told what the value is. We show videos like this. We hold weekly pathshala for the villagers, train them, this is what it is. We bring them to bigger cities, we honor them. See, it was your involvement that changed the village, and that is an inspiration for other people.
Great, and with that, I think we're going to have to wrap up this wonderful session. I believe you'll both be here for a little bit for follow-up questions. So thank you, Ajay, thank you, Vinod, for the wonderful insights.
I'll fail in my duty if I don't thank Asif Ismail and also American Bazaar for a very well-organized evening with so many wonderful speakers who had various ideas to share, and how do we do it. Thank you so much.